Right.
Hello, everyone. My name is Vinny Searcy. I'm the Director of Pupil Personnel Services here for the town of Norton School System. And tonight we're lucky to have Donald Kerr, I already lost it, Donald. What is your title again? I'm sorry.
Director of Student Lending and College Services.
There we go. Who's going to be talking to us tonight about the college financial aid process, specifically, how that works for juniors and seniors who really need to start thinking about that. So this is being recorded, and we will put it up on the website, in the high school website under the guidance department, so people can watch it. Or if you have friends out there, for the folks that are attending, who said, "Oh, geez, I missed that," tell them it's up. It'll be up there probably tomorrow morning. So, Donald, I'm going to turn it over to you. And again, thank you so much for doing this for us tonight. Truly appreciate it.
Yep, I'm glad to do it, and thank you for having me. Always appreciate trying to educate people on planning and paying for college. It's a topic that everybody could use a little help with. All right, so I'm going to start sharing my screen. And I'll start the presentation from the beginning. Okay, so hopefully everybody can see my screen okay. My contact information is up here. I'm always available for questions. Either you can email me, call me, any way you're comfortable with. You may have questions that pop up after the presentation, something you didn't think of during the presentation. So anybody can always reach out to me at any point in time, and I'm happy to assist you. So what are we going to go over tonight? I'm going to talk a little bit about financial aid overview. What are the different types of financial aid? Get you ready to apply. Then show you some of the steps on how to apply for a financial aid. And then also talk about what is the financial aid process. And then, of course, the big one, once that bill comes from the college, how are you going to fund that tuition? And then my favorite, cost-cutting ideas. So I have a recent graduate from the University of Maine, so I will use some real-life examples from stuff I've gone through from the parental side on this section as well. Because you learn a lot when you go through it from both sides. So hopefully you'll get some good tips. But to talk about financial aid in the very beginning, there's really two types of aid. There's merit aid and financial aid. So merit aid is something that's addressed during the college admissions process. And it's really based on what I call the ICs, the athletics, academics, demographics during the college admissions process. You can get money, and colleges can give you assistance financially because your student is attractive and they want your student to come to their college. Financial aid is going to be based on financials that exist in the household. So the financials, meaning, the income and assets of everybody in that household. But most importantly, and sometimes it can be a bit of a negative effect, is it's based on budgets, right? Every school has a financial aid budget. Some are very big, some are very small. States have financial aid budgets, and so doesn't the federal government as well. So my presentation tonight is going to be geared really all to this financial aid process. And it's important to point out because merit aid is not impacted in any way, shape, or form by financial aid. However, if you're getting financial aid and you have also received merit aid, that merit aid can impact what you're getting from the financial aid or financial aid office. So the two do impact each other. But tonight we're going to focus on financial aid. So what is financial aid, right? So one of my favorite myths is everybody hears that word financial aid and they think, oh, it's free money. Well, it is. There is some free money out there, but it is also things like employment, work study jobs, financial aid loans. And even though it's a good loan with low interest rates from the government, it is still a loan and it does have to be paid back. So keep that in mind. Financial aid is not just free money. It's also other types of assistance you can get. And it comes from lots of different sources. It comes from your federal government, sometimes your state government, but probably the biggest one is going to be from the colleges themselves. That tends to be one of the bigger sections or bigger chances you can get good financial aid from the college themselves. So who can get financial aid? In my opinion, everybody. So this is another myth I hear every year. Oh, you know, my neighbors told me not, they applied for financial aid and they got nothing. So I'm not going to bother applying for financial aid. Really, in my opinion, the only people who should not bother applying for financial aid is if your plan is to write the check to pay the tuition bill in full, then okay, you probably don't need it. But absolutely everybody else should apply for financial aid. You know, some basics: you have to be a citizen, have a high school diploma, be enrolled at least half-time, registering with the selective service. That's the draft. And I put a little asterisk next to this one because thankfully this question is going away next year. So anybody who has a senior who's going off to college next year, when you filled out your financial aid forms, you did have to answer that question. However, if you have a junior in high school right now, when you'll be filling out the form next year, that question will no longer be there. There are lots of changes coming to the FAFSA form for anybody who has a junior in college right now. And I'm just going to try to address some of those major changes throughout the presentation tonight, as this is kind of one of those transition years we'll be going through. But the biggest one out here from eligibility is maintaining satisfactory academic progress as determined by the college. That's very important to know, that you get this offer of financial aid in that freshman year. The student's going to be able to need to keep up their grades throughout the semesters to be able to keep their financial aid eligibility for the following years. So how do you apply for financial aid? Kind of what is the process you're going to go through? There are two main forms that everybody's going to have to fill out. FAFSA is the free application for federal student aid. This is required by every single college. And it's a good form because it gets you access to the different levels of financial aid. So we'll be the gateway to aid from the federal government, the state government, and the college themselves. So it's a very important form to do. It is free to file. In addition to the FAFSA form, some colleges will want you to do a second financial aid form called the Css Profile Form. Now, these are mostly private colleges. There are some state colleges, but it's roughly only around 250 colleges that ask for this second form. This second form does not impact aid from the federal government or the state government, but it does impact aid you could receive from that individual college. So it really just gets you access to aid from that college. They're going to ask you to do both forms, the FAFSA and the CSS profile. And there's a lot of duplicate data fields you enter on both of them. So it seems like a lot of work. On the plus side, colleges that ask you to fill out this form can sometimes have bigger financial aid budgets. So it's a little more work, but it can be worth it in the long run. Not free to file. It does cost you a little bit, but even the fee the college board charges you is kind of minimal. Timeline for financial aid. So this is one slide I say everybody should really focus on and really remember, because it kind of lays out everything you're going to be doing. So we talked about the two forms, the FAFSA and the CSS profile. They become available for you to fill them out on October 1st. That's the first day they become available. So if you had a senior in high school right now, you should have already had this form filled out. It's not too late. If you haven't, you still can fill out the form. But if you have a junior in high school, mark October 1st on your calendar. That's when the forms are going to be available and you can start to fill them out. Acceptance into colleges, you're going to get that usually around the springtime. Could be as early as January, as late as March. And then what happens, because you've applied for a financial aid, around the springtime, March to April, a college sends you out what they call a financial aid award letter. This is a letter telling you kind of really the results of those financial aid applications you've filled out. They're going to spell out how much money you've received from the federal government, the state government, and the college themselves. And then May 1st, we all know this as decision day. This is May 1st, the day you have to put down your deposit and say, yes, hold my seat. My student is coming to your college. Then after that, there's a bit of a time frame, right? There's orientation, signing up for classes, meal plans, dorm rooms. And the colleges, believe it or not, don't send the bills out to you to around June or July. So you don't have to worry about funding the college education till June to August, depending on the particular cycle of your school. But note that October 1st date, that's when you can start filling out these financial aid forms. So the different types of aid that are out there, there is.
Can I just interrupt? Just to
Sure.
clarify, folks need to fill out a FAFSA every year. Sometimes
Yes,
people get confused. They think they do it that first time and that's it, but it's every year.
yeah, that's a great point. You have to fill out the FAFSA form every single year. The CSS Profile Form is generally one time during the freshman year, but the FAFSA form is every year. So the types of aid. So gift aid, this is the good free money, the scholarships, grants, and awards. Anytime you see that, it's money that does not have to be repaid. But the other types of aid are what we talked about, the work study, federal loans, sometimes state loans, and even private loans. Sometimes you can see these things on the award letter from the colleges as well. So the awards, they're based mostly on need, which is great. But scholarships can be based on any criteria. And scholarships can come from lots of different sources. So you can get scholarships from the college as a result of filling out the FAFSA form, but you can also go directly to the colleges and they will list scholarships that you have to apply for separately. They will list common scholarships that apply to, if it's an engineering school, they'll tend to have a lot of engineering scholarships on their website. So scholarships are things you can search for yourself in addition to getting some as a result of the FAFSA form. You can also search outside the college and do these completely on your own, looking for basically private scholarships. Great source of money. It's all free money, and scholarships generally don't have to get repaid. It is one of those things you have to put in the effort, the time and the effort to get a little bit of that reward out of it. But I recommend everybody look for scholarships, starting now until the day their student graduates. It's not just a freshman year activity. Scholarships you can get every single year you're in college. And even if you win small scholarships, like $1,000 scholarship here, it's going to be less loan money you need to borrow, which means there's less interest. So even $1,000 scholarship in terms of real savings could be $2,000 or $3,000 when you look at it over the life of the loans you may need to borrow. So definitely do a lot of scholarship searching as much as you possibly can. So the self-help aid, the federal work study program is probably the biggest one you'll see out there. And it's really a part-time job around the college campus, whether it's in the library or the cafeteria, but it's a job just like anything else. Students got to put in their hours, they get their paycheck. And it certainly does help pay for those everyday expenses. But it is awarded based on financial need. So not everybody can get a federal work study program. But I've found with my son who was off at college, even if he couldn't get a federal work study program, you can seek out employment opportunities around the college campus. Plenty of opportunities on most colleges to help you earn some money to defray some of those tuition costs, which are starting to get up there. The types of loans. So financial aid loans, we talked about that early when you apply for it. These are going to be what I call the good loans, federal student loans. They're known as the direct loan, subsidized and unsubsidized loans. In my day, we called them the Stafford loans. It's the same program, but it's a federal student loan that's in the student's name. You can also borrow from the federal government what's called plus loans for parents. So the government does have a loan that parents can borrow to pay the tuition bill. And then even on the graduate level, we're just starting out the college journey, but once the student gets to the graduate level, there are more loans that they can borrow solely in their name. And as a parent, you're kind of off the hook at that point. Everything's really on the student to do all the borrowing, fill out the financial aid forms. Can certainly help them if you want to, but they are kind of independent at that stage. In federal loans, besides the interest rates, they have a lot of benefits, such as right now, as a result of the pandemic, federal loans are what we call administrative forbearance due to the CARES Act, where they have 0% interest accruing on the loans and no payments are due. So you can get good benefits like that. So it's always a good idea to look at the federal loans. And private loans, there are lots of private student loans out there to help you pay the tuition bill. These are really lender-specific loans, so you need to do your research on the different rates, the different benefits lenders may be offering you. But if the federal loans don't cover everything, you can look at private loans as well. All right, so getting ready to
one other thing there, Donald. I just want to make sure people understand too. The big difference once these young people go off to college is that the colleges are going to talk to them directly. Some are better at talking to parents about financial, the financial aid information, but a lot of times when it comes to filling out the forms or going to sign for things at the financial aid office or even getting their loan information, it's going to go directly to them. And it's not going to go to you as parents. So just kind of be aware of that, especially that freshman year. I think, the students themselves aren't used to having to deal with this kind of thing. So I just kind of put that on people's radar. You'd think it would come to you, but it very often does not. It goes directly to the student.
Yeah, no, that's a fantastic point. And in fact, if you reach out as a parent to the school, they won't even communicate with you. They'll give you the answer that, no, we can't even speak with you due to privacy laws. There is an authorization form that the student can fill out, giving the parents permission. So I recommend everybody does that just for the reason you mentioned. So many things get missed. And if you're a parent can at least make that call and communicate with the college, you'll be that much better off. All right, so the 4 steps to applying for financial aid. I break them down to creating the financial aid folder. And yes, you could be old fashioned and actually have that manila folder that goes in the big metal file cabinet, but you can also make this a folder on your computer or on your phone, whatever is convenient for you. Applying for a username and ID, that's probably one of the most important things we'll talk about. Gathering the information you need to apply, and then researching your financial aid deadlines, right? So we said October 1st is the very first date it becomes available. Well, when do you have to get it done by? That's always a very critical question. So those are my 4 steps to apply. What goes into that first thing, the financial aid folder? The first thing you're going to put in there, and the most important, is your federal student aid IDs. So to do any financial aid, you're going to have to apply for a username and password. It is something you're only going to use once a year. You will lose it. You will misplace it. You will forget it. But if you have it in a folder someplace, when you come see somebody in year 2 and you go to fill out that financial aid form, you're going to know exactly where it is. Um, Output from the FAFSA form. So the results of your FAFSA, it's a great idea to keep that. If you're doing scholarship searching and you're applying for scholarships outside of the college, a lot of scholarships want to see the results of your FAFSA form. That's part of their eligibility criteria. So it's a good thing to have that. Loan paperwork is always a good idea to keep. Student's going to be in school for 4 years. You take a loan out that freshman year, no payments are due. It's very easy to be out of sight, out of mind. You want to know when it's time to graduate, hey, I know exactly where to go to find all my loan information, who I owe, how much I'm going to owe. Communication from the college. Because of that communication challenge back and forth, you want to keep paperwork, things you get from the college. It will be very helpful. Award letters, good idea to keep a copy of that financial aid award letter, especially as you get into year 2. You want to see if there's any difference from what they offered you in year 1. The ID, this is probably something everybody can do pretty easily. The process probably takes about 5-10 minutes for everybody to sign up for a federal student aid ID. It allows you to sign the FAFSA form. It allows students to sign for their federal loan programs. And most importantly, when you're filling out the FAFSA form itself, it does having a username and password, excuse me. Having a username and password will allow you to take your federal tax information that's sitting at the IRS and automatically transfer it into your financial aid application for you, which will guarantee accuracy and save you a ton of work. So very important to get these. You can sign up for it at studentaid.gov. And like I said, it takes about 5-10 minutes for each one to sign up. You will need one for the student, and then at least one parent will also need to get that username and password. But if you do that, it's going to make the financial aid process so much easier down the line. All right, gathering information needed to apply. All right, so is anybody for the 2022-2023 FAFSA year? You actually, and these are people who are seniors in college right now, maybe have already filled out the FAFSA form. They need things such as their 2020 income tax return. And I always do a double take on that one, right? Because I'm saying 2022, 2023 academic year, and you need 2020 tax returns. In the financial aid world, they call this your prior year tax information. So anybody who has a junior in high school right now, when you go to fill out the FAFSA form after October 1st, you're going to be using your 2021 income tax returns. They tell you that on the FAFSA form when you're filling it out itself. They will tell you the year of the tax return they want you to have. But it's also going to be W-2 statements. Make sure you have those. If you have any untaxed income, you're going to need information on that. It's not common, but maybe somebody has an example. This could be a state disability pension that's non-taxed. You do need to know information on your assets for things such as stocks and bonds and real estate. We'll talk about what to include, not to include, but you're not going to count things like your the equity in your primary residence, your 401k, balances on checking and savings accounts. And then demographic information, social security numbers, dates of birth for both the parents and the students. While we talk about the tax returns being the prior year information, when it comes to information on your assets, your checking and your savings, they want as of today. So meaning the day you're filling out the FAFSA form, they want to know what the balance is of your assets as of that date. So it's current information on assets, but prior information on tax returns. Important step here, researching deadlines. So we talked about federal financial aid, state financial aid, and financial aid from the college. Really, the most important one to worry about is from the college. They're generally going to have the earliest deadline, and they'll be ahead of both the federal and state deadline. So what you want to do is visit every college you're thinking of applying for admissions, and go to their financial aid section and research what their deadline date is. We call this a priority filing date, meaning they want your FAFSA form and your CSS profile form submitted to them by that date. Now, some colleges break it down. There could be different dates depending on if your student's doing early action, early admission, regular decision process. And then, believe it or not, there's even a further breakdown by if you're a freshman or if you're an upperclassman student. Upperclassmen students tend to have later dates, and anybody doing an early action, early decision, they tend to have earlier dates or deadline dates. So research your colleges and find out who has the earliest deadline, and then just fill out the form by that deadline date. All the forms you're going to fill out, they're going to be kind of a one and done for all colleges. You're going to fill out a FAFSA form, and you're going to list all the colleges on that form to receive the FAFSA. So as long as you're getting it done by the earliest college, you'll hit all the other deadlines as well. The earlier, the better. You can absolutely rush out and do it on October 1st. It is not going to hurt you in any way, shape, or form. But it just doesn't guarantee you get money. Just because you filled it out on October 1st doesn't mean you're going to get the most. It just means that after they've evaluated your financial need, they'll give you the maximum amount you would qualify for. So great idea to do it the sooner the better. All right, how to apply. So you're going to go to studentaid.gov, and this is just a screenshot of what the website looks like. Always make sure you see .gov in the URL. If you see .com, .net, .org, you want to exit out and make sure you get to studentaid.gov. And again, the FAFSA form should be filed every year. When you're filling out the FAFSA form, couple tips: the language is all directed towards the student. So all the questions that you're going to be responding to are worded as if the student was filling out the form. I don't recommend this. I recommend it's done together with the parents and the students, because there are questions about your income, your assets, things a typical student may not understand. You can use a parental email to try to overcome some of those communication issues in the FAFSA form, and they will send some communications to that email. Divorced or separated, that's a question I get every year. It comes up a lot. So this is going to be a huge change from this year to next year. So anybody who filled this out this year or is about to fill it out for a senior in high school, the rule of thumb is divorced or separated, it's whoever the student resides with. So if, the parents are separated and the student lives with mom, only mom's financial information goes into the FAFSA form. What they're going to be changing for anybody who has a senior in high school right now is they're going to be looking at who gets to claim the student on their tax return and who provides 51% or more of the financial support for that student. So the student could be living with dad, and you would normally, dad's information would go into the FAFSA form, but mom claims the student on her tax return as a dependent, and mom is providing 51% or more of their financial support. They're going to want mom's financial information in the FAFSA form. So that's a big change for everybody next year. I just want to make sure you're aware of that. And again, the FAFSA form is good because there is a lot of guidance and self-help and assistance with it. But that's a major change that could affect a lot of families out there. Remarried situations, again, if you're looking at the household, it does include the step parents. So, you know, if the child's living with mom and mom's providing the financial support and she's remarried, it's now going to be that household makeup. So it's going to be mom and the stepdad that goes in there. The part about does not matter who claims the student, that is true for this year. But again, next year, it's going to be something everybody needs to pay attention to. And if you do get stuck, the one great thing about the FAFSA form, you just put your cursor in the field you're on, and over on the right-hand side, self-help guidance is going to pop up and really give you the definitions of what they're looking for in that field. All right, so this slide I wanted to spend a little more time on because we talked about earlier about some of the information you need to gather. It's very important to know what is included and what is excluded as far as your assets on the FAFSA form. So not included, you know, the home you live in, the equity you have in your house doesn't count. Value of life insurance, you have whole life insurance with a cash value, that does not count. Retirement plans, so IRAs, 401ks, pensions, annuities, those are also what we call protected assets, and they do not go into the FAFSA form. What does go in there, it's other real estate. So if you have a rental property, you'll look at the equity in that. Vacation homes, you'll look at the equity in that. Trust funds, universal gift to minor accounts and universal transfer to minor accounts. Money markets, mutual funds, stocks or bonds, CDs that are not in retirement plans. A 529 college savings plan does go into this, the FAFSA form, but important to note, it goes on the parental side of the FAFSA form. It does not go on the student side. And that's important because it gets a smaller weight. Parental assets get a smaller weight than student assets. Now, the one thing I will kind of counter this with, this is for the FAFSA form. So if you're filling out the CSS profile form, pretty much everything is included. Everything you see here will go into the CSS profile form. And there will be additional things that go into the CSS profile form that you don't see here as well. But from the FAFSA perspective, if your college only wants the FAFSA form, this is how you're going to treat your assets and what you're going to include and not include. This one with the pandemic, this one has come up an awful lot, special circumstances. So because of the way the FAFSA form looks at the prior year tax return, and it doesn't look at your current situation, very often income is not reflective. Your current income cannot be reflective of what your past income is. So, you know, if you have some extenuating or special circumstances, right? You filled out 2020 tax return, had income of, you know, $150,000 a year. A parent was laid off due to the pandemic, and now actual income in the household is only, say, $80,000 a year. Well, your FAFSA form is overstating your income. You can address that directly with the school's financial aid office, explain the circumstances, and they have the authority to make an adjustment to the results of your FAFSA form if they deem it to be appropriate. Certainly, they're going to ask questions. They're going to want you to explain everything. They may even ask for documentation, but it's always worth it, especially where you have a decrease in income that's not reflective on what you had to put into the FAFSA form. So keep that in mind. I would have to say appeals for a financial aid were up significantly the last 2 years, 35% increase. And it doesn't always have to be due to a loss of income. It could be other special circumstances, right? Maybe one parent's become very sick and they have large medical bills that are not accounted for. You can also address those types of situations as well. All right, so the financial aid process. So you got your forms, you filled them out. kind of what happens next. Basically, the Department of Education is going to get your data. They process it. They're going to give it to the schools. They're going to give you each individual school you list on the FAFSA is going to have all your information, including a number called your EFC, Expected Family Contribution Number. And this is what's used to drive your financial aid award letters. So the EFC is a very important output and a very important process when it comes to how much financial aid you're going to get. They define it as the amount a family could reasonably, or in my opinion, unreasonably contribute to the cost of education. The good thing about your EFC is it stays the same regardless of what college you're going to. And it'll be very important, and I'll show you in a minute, in the formula they use, how it can be beneficial. The EFC is another one of those major things that are going to be changed next year on the FAFSA form. So again, anybody with a senior in college, you did your FAFSA form, you will see the terminology expected family contribution. Anybody with a junior in high school right now, when you fill out this form next year and your FAFSA gets done, they're going to give you something called a student aid index. It's replacing the EFC. It's going to be used in the exact same manner I'm about to explain, but they're changing some of their mathematical calculations they do behind the scenes. And they're also really kind of more or less just changing what they call it. But your EFC is going to be very important, or your what they're going to call in the future your student aid index. And this is really how it's used in the financial aid process. So they're going to use your EFC or your student aid index. They're going to look at the total cost of attendance at the college. And this is everything, that big scary number, you know, tuition, room and board, fees, books, transportation, miscellaneous cost. They're going to minus out your expected family contribution from your FAFSA form. That difference is your financial need. It's important to know that because this stays the same across colleges. So let's just say, hypothetically, you fill out your FAFSA form, you get your EFC, your results, and it's says your family can contribute $30,000 a year to the cost of college. Now, say you're at a college that is $60,000 a year, you minus out your EFC, that's going to leave you with a financial need of $30,000. So that's pretty big, right? So you've got a good, strong financial need. Exact same family on that FAFSA form, you also listed another college, and that college is maybe a state college, and it costs $32,000 a year. You know, take that $32,000 a year minus your EFC of $30,000, and your financial need is now $2,000. It's a very, very small financial need. So this is going to be the first time where you can get an idea of what colleges may help you. Important to note that because of the way that formula works, you should absolutely never rule out a college based on its net cost, or its gross cost, I should say. So if you're looking at a college and it says, hey, it's $75,000 a year, don't rule it out until you go through the financial aid process. Because of the way this formula works, be prepared. Maybe you have to have that conversation that we may not be able to afford it, but the more expensive college is, you're going to have a bigger financial need, maybe the more money they're going to give you. So my son, this is exactly what happened to him. We had 3 private colleges starting around, 60, 65 a year, and a couple of state colleges in the 30 to 35 a year range. When financial aid was all factored in, the net cost for our family, for all the colleges across the board, were within about $2,000 of each other. So my out-of-pocket expenses were, $2,000 more if you wanted to go to the more expensive school that was almost double the cost. The other thing that's important is when you're to know about financial need is that every college is different. Some colleges are going to say we strive to meet 100% of our family's financial need. That means they're going to be more generous and hand out maybe bigger financial aid packages. A college may say, we only meet on average 50% of our family's financial need. So in that example, if you had a $30,000 a year EFC, that college might only give you $15,000 on their financial aid offer. So that's really what the financial aid process boils down to: filling out your FAFSA form, looking at your EFC, and understanding how the colleges are going to use that number to determine how much money they're going to offer you to help you pay for the cost of college. Now, you're going to know this in the spring, which will be nice. Absolutely compare awards. You want to look at the different colleges. They will be all over the board. You're going to get some really nice awards from some colleges, and other colleges you're going to look at and go, oh, I really didn't get anything from this college. Sometimes you can negotiate. It's not like going down to the auto lot and negotiating with an auto dealer. Although in today's market, you really can't do that anyways with the price of cars and the shortage. But you can go back to your financial aid office, and as long as you ask in the right way, you can ask for more money. If you're in a competitive situation where you've got a very attractive student, the colleges may be willing to offer you a little bit more money. If that college is struggling with admissions and they have seats they need to fill, they have an admissions goal, they could absolutely be willing to negotiate with you from a financial aid perspective. So don't be afraid to reach out and try to negotiate and ask for more money. They absolutely will not take away what they've already offered you. They do ask you to accept the awards. Most colleges will make you say, yes, I want to take these loans, and yes, I want to accept this scholarship. So just be aware that they're going to give you this financial aid offer, but one of the second steps are you actually have to go in and accept them. The CSS profile, for anybody who does have to fill this out, you will go to the college board to fill it out. This one's a little more complicated. The FAFSA form, in my opinion, I think has gotten easier over the years, especially with all your tax data importing into the FAFSA form. It really takes a lot of the work around the numbers out of it for you. But the CSS profile is 100% manual. So you do have to have your tax returns right beside you, and you're just going to transcribe line by line. This is what they want me to put in, line 37, go in and type in line 37 on the form. But if you do have to do it, you go to the college board. Only thing you're going to need is the student's username and password, and most students already have usernames and passwords for this website. They're looking at SATs. They're doing a lot of their college searching and matching activities on this site as well. Okay, so funding college tuition. Right, so now you've applied for financial aid, you've made your choice, you've looked at the different aid offers, put down your deposit, your students going to school. How are you going to pay that bill? So really, there's a couple of different ways. You can use past income. These are savings, best ways, right? 529 college savings plans, anything you've been able to save whatsoever. You can use present income. Tuition payment plans are one of my favorite things people are not aware of. So you can take a portion of the tuition bill or all of the tuition bill, and you can do it on a payment plan directly with the school. So maybe after everything's all said and done, you're going to owe the school $5,000. Well, you could sign up and say, hey, I'm going to do a payment plan and I'm going to pay you $500 a month for the next 10 months. And that covers your $5,000. No interest accrues on that whatsoever. So it's a great way to get some savings, but you've got to have the cash flow for it. So consider it. And you'll be shocked when your kid goes off to college, how much cash flow you actually get. It seems counterintuitive because you got the tuition bill, but believe it or not, you do actually have some extra money in your back pocket. The grocery bill goes down, the electricity bill goes down, and certainly, you know, the ability for them to go, Mom and Dad, can I have $50? I'm going out to movies and dinner. Those opportunities disappear as well. You can look at future income, federal loans, and private student loans, and even home equity loans. So those are all just ways of borrowing against that student's future income that they're going to earn. Tax deductions, there are plenty of tax deductions out there for parents who have kids in college. I'm not going into details because I'm not a tax expert or a tax professional. So if you have somebody who does your taxes for you, absolutely let them know you have somebody in college. If you're a bit of a tax geek like me, and you like to do TurboTax, one of those other online tools, they actually walk you through all the different deductions that are out there. But it's a great way to save for college. Talk a little bit about the loans that are out there. The federal loans are what I call the financial aid loans. I recommend everybody takes these. Whatever they're offered, they tend to have very good interest rates. 3.73 fixed is where they're at right now. They're what I call the only true student loan, meaning it's a loan that's in the student's name with no credit check and no cosigner, and they're guaranteed to get it. So there is a difference between subsidized and unsubsidized loans, and you'll see this on the award letter. If it is a subsidized loan, that means no interest is adding up on the loan while the student is in school. If it's unsubsidized, no payments are required, but they are going to be accruing interest on that loan while the student's in school. But still, the interest rates and the repayment terms really can't be beat. So you should start with those loans. Unfortunately, those loans are not a lot of money. So as a freshman in that type of loan, you can only get a maximum of $5,500. Sophomores get $6,500 and juniors and seniors get $7,500. Graduates at the graduate level, they get a lot more money. And independent students, which is very rare, they can also get a lot more money. So no, those loans are great, but they just don't cover a lot, unfortunately. The other loan that's an option out there is called the PLUS loan for parents. So that's a federal loan that a parent can borrow that's just solely in their name. Fixed interest rate currently of around 6.28%. You're allowed to defer it or start paying on the loan right away. They do credit checks on these loans, but they do what I call a very light credit check. And it's important to note that this loan is in the parent's name. The student is not legally responsible for repaying this loan whatsoever. But it is an option people can turn to. The one downside I always say to the Parent Plus loan is they charge an origination fee. Currently around 4.22%. So for every $10,000 you borrow, they're charging you a fee of $422. But it is an option to consider. The only thing I would say with this loan is if you do see it on the award letter you get from the college, know that it's something they cannot guarantee you. It's just something they're recommending you. You still have to go out and actually apply and pass the credit check. All right, so if you're looking at private student loans, that's the other type of option that's out there to help you pay the tuition bill. You want to look, you can get private student loans that are in the parent's name. You can also get private student loans that have the student as the primary borrower and parent as a co-borrower. And now, because these are private loans, you're going to see lots of banks and lots of options. So you can get variable rates and you can get fixed interest rate options. Generally, no origination fees, no prepayment penalty terms, but you can get a lot of different repayment choices. They'll let you choose really short terms like 5 years or long terms like 15 years. But because they're private, some lenders will try to give you benefits to use their loan over some of their competitors. We do a benefit for our members, a 3% refund with proof of graduation, which is nice. So on that $10,000 loan example, that's about a $300 refund. Not a ton of money, but everything helps when it comes to repayment. But the biggest thing I can say with private loans is just do your research ahead of time. You're not going to need to apply for the loan till July, August. So, May, June, do your research on private loans, look at the options that are out there and then narrow it down to two you like and apply for them in July or August and see who's going to give you the better interest rate. Cost cutting ideas. All right, so there's lots of things out there that you can do to try to cut down on that tuition bill. So my favorite one is the New England Board of Higher Education. This is a program that if your son or daughter wants to take a particular major and it's not offered by the state college system in which you reside in, but it is offered at one of the surrounding state college systems, you can go out of state to that college and you pay a discounted tuition rate. So my son, mechanical engineer, right there, when we live in Mass, plenty of great engineering schools in Mass. The UMass systems have some, but he took a specific major, mechanical engineering technology. No schools in Massachusetts offer that from the state system. So he went to an out-of-state school, and on average, we saved $7,500 a year off the tuition by doing that. Very fortunate to do it, but that's a great way to save money if your student wants to study one of these. And you can look at this website and they'll have a list of all the different degrees and what colleges offer them if it's something they're thinking about taking. And then there are other things out there to help you reduce the cost, but there are things you have to ask about. Sibling and legacy discounts can sometimes apply, but colleges may not know that or may not offer that. So, if you have one student going to college as a freshman, then a year later, you're going to have a second student come and be ready for college, ask that college, say, do you have a discount if I send both of my kids here? If you have alumni who went to that school, you can ask about those discounts. They don't necessarily volunteer them when you apply for financial aid, but if you go out and research them, sometimes you can qualify for them. And then you can reduce the long-term cost by, taking some AP, the college level exam programs, by kind of testing out and getting college credits. So there's less classes that student has to take when they're in college. And even, I was at an event at a high school the other night, and something which was a great idea I saw a parent did. You got to have a very ambitious student, but they took extra classes as much as possible, and they got their 4-year degree in 3 years. So they saved a ton of money on that room and board for that 4th year by getting extra classes in during the summer and throughout the year, shaved a whole year off. Commuting and looking at resident assistance, cheaper meal plans. Don't starve your students, but I will guarantee you this is another one that happened with my son. He was off at college. Of course, we sent him off. We bought the most expensive meal plan. Do not want him to starve. Gave him a little bit of spending money. And sure enough, within a couple of weeks, he calls us up looking for more spending money. Give him a little bit more. Within a couple of days, he's looking for more spending money. We're freaking out. What are you spending your money on? Sure enough, he was sick and tired of the cafeteria food, and he was going off campus and eating meals. So know your student, know their habits, their patterns, and choose a meal plan accordingly. It could be even, hey, your kid sleeps late, so why get a breakfast plan? Books and supplies. You can rent. You can go online and rent books. One thing my student did, he, roommates with somebody in the same engineering major. So what they did is they shared books. They had a couple books that they purchased together. They made sure they didn't have the same class time, and they defrayed the cost that way. And they shared the book back and forth as they needed it. And then, of course, the tax credits and the scholarship searching. Those are definitely good ways to help you reduce that tuition bill as well. So that kind of concludes my presentation, and good timing because I think my voice is finally starting to go. But I thank everybody for taking the time to listen to this webinar. Hopefully you found some good information and some tips that can help you navigate the financial aid process. But anytime you need help, please do not hesitate to reach out, and I'm happy to assist.
So we do have a few people. If you have any questions, please put it in the Q&A now. Does not look like we have any, Donald. So
Okay.
again, I appreciate this. We will put this up on our website, as I said, probably tomorrow morning. So thank you as always, Donald, for taking the time to be with us. I know we've gotten really positive responses from folks in the past. So I do appreciate it, and have a good night. And thanks to all the folks that were here as well that watched. So have a good night, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.